This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. My guest today is Mark McKenzie. Mark is the founder of Megapont, the MegaKongs, and the Monkasaurs, which are all part of the Megapont fictional NFT universe. A lot of this is on stacks on Bitcoin. We'll start to learn all about Megapont as we get into the show. Welcome along to the show, Mark.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Excited to have you here, Mark. Let's begin the way that we always do, which is, could you please introduce yourself? Love to hear a little bit about your background. Where are you from? All that good stuff.
Yeah, so I'm Mark. I guess how far back should we go? Should we go back, professional career? Give a good overview? Yeah, let's do that. So I've been an engineer now, software engineer for 15 years, thereabouts. I started back in the day, my original gig was kind of custom MySpace profile pages for the local bands, right? So for those who don't know, MySpace was like a social network before Facebook. So I would do like HTML, CSS for folks there. So that probably gives people a good idea of actually how old I am. And then I transitioned into more of a traditional sort of software engineering role. So mostly e-commerce, right? So around the time I was getting involved with engineering, e-commerce was huge, especially in the UK. Almost every local mom and pop shop and every business was trying to sell online. So it was a high growth area. And I just built checkout software and really became a cog in an agency wheel for a couple of years. And then when I was around 20 years old, I started to generate this startup bug, right? So startups were just starting to pick up some trajectory. A lot of my friends were going off to America, raising funding and what looked like living the dream. So I spent a bit of time over in Mountain View around this time. I'd been hacking now in every hackathon I could go to in the UK, all of like startup weekends, all of the other hackathons. And I was writing software in a few developer programs. One of them was pretty cool, the Aldebaran robotics program. So it was a cool like AI machine learning, heuristic-based bunch of models for I guess a somewhat intelligent robot. And then I, done the whole startup thing, done somewhat well from that, and then managed to fail a startup and rinse and repeat that a few times, raise investment, all that fun stuff. And then that takes us to about sort of 7 years ago when we had our first child, and my partner, rightfully so perhaps, said it's awesome being an entrepreneur, but it would also be nice to have some sort of regular income in the household. Now we have a child, and things were pretty crazy then. Some months would be fantastic. Other months would be just really bad, and not like financially. I'm talking emotionally and mentally, just draining. It wasn't a good situation. So it's good to get some stability, both mentally and financially. And then I took a role as a head of data science at a pseudo consultancy in the procurement space. And it was responsible for building machine learning models to optimize spend pipelines in some of the world's largest companies. And then amongst this, I obviously didn't lose the startup bug. So I founded a company called Arcata with some friends, Matt and Tom. That's done really well. It's the KYC and AML business for the art industry. So it handles all the KYC for a bunch of the really big auction houses and art galleries in the world. And this is how I got involved in NFTs, actually. In the background, amongst all this, like everyone else involved in startups, I've been accumulating crypto. But we're at like 2016 right now. So I've got what I would consider savings in crypto. But things hadn't started to moon at this point. It was enough money. Me and my partner, we viewed it as enough money to perhaps buy us a house, but it wasn't anything ridiculously life-changing. Obviously, that changed over the next sort of 4 years, and that put us in a position where, especially when COVID came around, along with all of these startups, I started messing around with. People have heard this story before. Messing around with Wall Street bets. I managed to catch the GameStop hype train, which was, I guess, financially life-changing for us as a family. and meant that we had a different outlook on things and definitely took on more risk. In between all this, I joined a company called Primer, was a team lead there, responsible for architecting like big frameworks that third-party API services are used with, and blah, 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 blah. So I don't want to digress too much into the technical stuff, but I've basically just been writing software for a whole bunch of times, being a data scientist, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense, Mark. And so it's clear then that you've obviously been dabbling in crypto for some time. So just before we start to learn about the fascinating Megapont universe, how did you start to interact with the Stacks ecosystem? Like, have you always kind of seen yourself as a Bitcoiner, or were you dabbling in all kinds of different blockchain ecosystems? And so how did you, what attracted you to Stacks and Bitcoin?
I've always been a Bitcoiner, yeah. So since 2011, that's when I first got into Bitcoin. And I won't say the person's name.
That's early, though. That's early, Mark.
Yeah, it was early. So, and I have one person to thank for that, really. It was someone that was on one of the startup accelerators I was participating in at the time. And he was like, hey, have you guys heard of Bitcoin? And we're like, well, kind of. Like, at the time, a lot of people's interest were piqued by the white paper. But it was kind of like, in my circle anyway, a lot of people viewed it as, this is a really cool research project, right? And the technology here is so far ahead of its time that one day this could potentially be like, I guess it could disrupt entire industries and the global economy. But it certainly felt at the time that we were so early. We feel like we're early now. Back then, there were like one or two exchanges that had no use whatsoever. Your bank would just refuse to let you buy this stuff, right? Just point blank. They were like, no, this is underground currency used for illegal things, for buying weed on a weekend and nothing else. It was super early. Hardly anyone knew anything about it. And a whole bunch of us on the accelerator just bought a whole bunch of Bitcoin. At the time, it's cheap, like really cheap, like penny sweets cheap, maybe a little bit more than that, but it was super cheap. And I think a lot of people probably spent some of their investment on it. So we all bought into a whole bunch of Bitcoin, and a lot of people did sell. Mr. Z on the Megapont team, he actually sold some of his early Bitcoin that he acquired, maybe a little bit later than 2011. But a lot of people kept it. And obviously there's some of the Megapont community know this, but I had quite a bit of Bitcoin locked up in MT Gox as well. So it's really cool to see some movement there, and looking like a whole bunch of us are going to start to get some of that back at some point this year, which is nice. We can maybe talk about that. I don't know what that's going to do for the market when that much liquidity comes back into play that everyone assumed had been lost. So I wrote that off like 8 years ago. I just assumed there's no way I'm going to see a single dime of this money. And it's just one of those things of playing around with early tech. I mean, at the time, it was really early. There was no regulation. There was just a whole bunch of people just playing around and having fun. And that's what it felt like. It was a super exciting space. It was moving really fast. And everyone, for the most part, had no interest in the monetary gains of this stuff, right? So Bitcoin wasn't as commercialized as it is, say, now. The notion of it being a store of wealth was somewhat absurd. Like, the volatility at the time was insane. It was like penny stocks, right? It would just you would see wild sort of daily swings almost every other day.
That's right. I mean, even people look at people such as yourselves who, you and your friends who might have got into Bitcoin super early, 2011, but at that time it would be very hard to imagine Bitcoin climbing to, the prices that we've seen, so, $69,000 US. So it's a very common story. Not that many people from that time managed to hold on to kind of the bulk of their coins, because it'd be easy to sell it for a 2x or a 5x, not understanding where it would go to, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think back then, if someone were to say, and people were saying this, right? There are a whole bunch of people who were saying this is going to 50,000, it's going to 100,000. And for the most part, I would be lying to you if I said I believed it would. As early, maybe I thought it would, perhaps like 50 years, but like 5 to 10 years, no chance, I would have said. I just didn't see it happening. Maybe when I remember when it hit $400, and I was like, okay, maybe this really is going somewhere much quicker than we all thought it was. And it's the equivalent of someone now saying it's going to $5 million. People look at those people and say, you're insane. Obviously, there's a whole different sort of scalability issue around Bitcoin now growing at the same rate it has done, right? Can you people see realistically Bitcoin being, say, a 10 to $50 trillion asset? I don't know. But at the time when its market cap was in the tens of millions, to think of it as $1 billion coin or $1 trillion coin perhaps wasn't so far-fetched.
Yeah, people. It's hard for people to understand the exponential growth of how networks grow. Although we've I think COVID has accelerated people's understanding of exponential growth for good or bad. Anyway, we'll have to. Can Bitcoin get to $1 million US? Who knows? Maybe one day could happen sooner than we think. Where does Stacks start to interact with your story?
Yeah. It's tied with Bitcoin. So a couple of my friends had said, hey, you need to check out Stacks some time ago, like block stack days. Yeah. And it was kind of just one of those coins because I don't want to say I was a Bitcoin maxi, but for the most part, I didn't have the time. I was really busy with career, with family. And I was like, I feel like I'm exposed to cryptocurrency by being exposed to Bitcoin. That's what it certainly felt like. And for the most part, that's still true today. If people like to say, if the king is up, then everyone else is up. But if the king is down, everyone else is down. It's still somewhat like that, but we do see that divergence in certain coins at certain times. So I was just like, hey, I'll park it in Bitcoin. And if something else does well, I assume it's going to be because Bitcoin's doing well. And I missed a whole bunch, right? So like Ethereum, I was around a lot at the time Ethereum started to take off and the ICO and that sort of thing. And I just ignored it thinking I'm exposed to Bitcoin. I don't need to be exposed to this too. And Stacks was somewhat similar, but then fast forward to NFTs, and we just really vibed as a team with the design aesthetics and the community. And I say this almost at every podcast and everyone I speak to, but the Stacks community is very, very different, especially when it comes to the NFT communities, than almost any other chain that I've interacted with. Whether that's because of the relationship with Bitcoin or something else, some intangible I can't quite put my finger on right now, but it's more mature. It seems to be a community of people who like to think before they speak. There's a lot less maxis involved. People aren't tribal saying, hey, Stacks is going to be the chain that ends up making everything else irrelevant. It's one of the only chains I've been involved with in NFT projects where people will openly say, hey, Solana is good for this, but it's terrible for this, and Ethereum is great, but we don't like this. You go to almost any other chain, even on Ethereum, and it's like, oh, if it's not L1 ETH, it's a shit coin. Like, don't want to hear about it. Don't mint on there. Don't go there. Waste my time. So I thought to myself that there's an opportunity here to build on top of the existing community and building NFT project that really takes the best parts of that mature, investment-focused, well-educated, crypto maxi community and bring it into an NFT project. And I think for the most part, the NFT, the Megapont community echoes Stacks in that it's a crypto maxi community. And I was like, hey, we want to be part of this. And for sure, the fact that the Stacks Foundation were on top of design almost everywhere, docs, websites, the marketing stuff, the social comms, it was a no-brainer almost, really. Looking back, it seems like the obvious choice.
Yeah, well, it's actually been a funny week for me in terms of interacting with the various parts of the Stacks community, Mark? Because the podcast that I put out earlier this week, before this one, was a podcast that I did with Plutus and Obsidian from the Byzantium marketplace. I ended up having a Zoom call with Eli Herf and getting to know him a bit better. He, of course, is famous within the Stacks world for being a stalwart of the various different Discord communities. And then I got a random DM on Twitter from someone inviting me to it's called the Stacks Dads Discord community. So that is that's a cool little community of Stack Dads. So shout out to those guys. And now I'm doing a podcast with you. So it's been it's very much a Stacks week here on the Crypto Conversation. Megapont then, Mark, because the Megapont Apes are obviously one of the it's the Megapont Ape Club, that is one of the big NFT collections on Stacks, and I know there's a lot more to this world, so you're probably the best person to explain it. So what's the vision for the Megapont universe?
Well, the initial vision was, hey, let's create a really cool NFT project around our initial mint price, which was 50 stacks. So let's raise around 100,000 stacks and let's build a really cool NFT project and just deliver on that roadmap on stacks and see what kind of community we build. That was the original vision. We wanted to make it somewhat narrative driven and try to build out this Megapont universe. The artist, we usually had like a grand idea of where he eventually wanted it to go. But we were also very realistic, right? There's only so much you can do. At the time, Stacks was 0.8 as well, like 0.8, 0.9. So we're looking at $100,000 in terms of a seed raise. You just have to be realistic with that amount of fundraise and say, hey, what can we actually do? And for the most part, we were like, we can deliver a pixel art-driven NFT project that rocks, that is just really cool and stands out amongst all of the NFT projects, not just the NFT projects on Stacks, but if you were to look at this as someone on ETH, you'd be like, oh, this would kind of be a big hitter on ETH too. The things that these guys are doing makes a lot of sense. And it started to transition more into, let's really focus on building out a brand and I'm going to say it again, a community that will hopefully outlive Megapont as a project. Nothing lasts forever. Maybe in 50 years it'll still be here. Maybe in 10 years it'll still be here. Who knows? But one thing that we're keen to do is build this environment where the community can thrive and it can connect and it can build projects and it can build relationships. And we've already started to see that as well. There are a number of projects that have started from Megapont. There are a number of people that have met up in real life to do business deals and have some real interactions beyond just chatting on Discord. And I think what we're now focused on doing is delivering an awesome experience to everyone within the community through NFT projects and various NFT drops.
And so you guys, you're one of the top NFT projects on Stacks in terms of trading volume, in terms of Stacks volume, right? So I suppose, fair to say you're probably one of the flagship collections on Stacks. What's coming next? So I can see you've got something called the Robo Factory. You can...
so that was in December, the Robo Factory.
Yep.
That was an interactive NFT experience, which is kind of cool and somewhat new. You don't see that everywhere. So basically, you were able to mint a robot, which was like a base robot, and then attach components to that robot to upgrade it. So if anyone's ever played like an RPG game, you've got your base character that you create at the beginning of the game. And along the game, you collect various bits of armor and swords and shields and that kind of stuff. And you can attach those to your character. It was very much an RP-driven-esque way of thinking about an NFT drop. And we used NFT tokens for all of the items so people could trade them and sell them as well. And we have aspirations to turn the robot factory and the robots that have been created into more of that sort of narrative-driven component as well. So we had the robot factory. We're working on a few things at the same time now. So we've got the apes in space, which is kind of funny. So we announced we were doing apes in space maybe about 3 months ago. And it's basically a wrapper NFT, right? So your ape goes to space. And then Doodles come out last week. We've wrapped Doodles in the spaceships, which, by the way, are absolutely amazing. And now it's going to look like we're just copying Doodles. Doodles haven't copied us, let's be real. It's just a really cool idea to send your NFT to space, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that a whole bunch of projects have probably been thinking about doing that. So we're working on that, and that's really cool. The process there is interesting. The artist has to upgrade all of the original apes that are on a 40 by 40 canvas, pixel canvas. So what we could have done is we could have just doubled that, because it's pixel art, so it will scale. So we could have doubled that to go 80 by 80, because we need the bigger canvas to play around with various things. But it didn't work. It was quite low fidelity, didn't look great. So we've had to rebuild all of the apes, all of the components, and all of the assets for this new we call it a high definition. It's 80 by 80, so it's anything but the high fidelity pixel apes, which are going to go to space. They're good. It's going to be really cool. It's going to be a fully narrative driven NFT project that is essentially a wrapper. But we're going to do it so that it is a separate NFT. You can sell it, you can trade it, and you won't trade your original ape. And then we have the Kong DAO, the MegaKongs, which mint on April 11th. And the Kong DAO is interesting. We're going to seed the DAO with around 80% of the mint proceeds, which should be about $1 million thereabouts. And we're going to hopefully create a DAO together as a community that funds other Web3 projects, other NFT projects, and is a real collaboration amongst what, for the most part, will be the Stacks community. So, hey, I want 5 Ethereum or 2,000 Stacks to build this project. And, this is what my project is. This is my credentials. Do you want to fund this? Yes or no? The DAO can vote on that. And I think I'm so excited about Kongs, purely because we had the Megapont fund that was just inundated. It was taking too much time to get through anything. And what we're now saying is, let's do this together as a community, and let's see what kind of projects we can fund, what kind of creators we can get off the ground up and running. Because I don't think it's always going to be a case of the funding that interests everyone, because you've got to assume that if you're a project going through the Kong DAO, you're going to have a whole bunch of holders, potentially up to 6,000, who already have exposure to your project or already interested in your project. So taking away the seed funding aspect, the community bootstrapping that you can make use of is going to be remarkable. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, so, and that is coming up in April then. Is it, I saw somewhere, I think that was going to be on Ethereum, is that right?
Yeah, so that's going to be on Ethereum. And our thinking behind that is one of our North Star metrics is new wallets into Stacks, because I think it's in order to maintain growth of the Stacks ecosystem in regards to NFT projects, we really need more new wallets to the space. Yes. And more new eyes, and whether that's coming from Ethereum, Solana, or just point blank a new wallet. So someone that you've managed to convince, say, your workplace that, hey, you need to check this out. And what we have determined is one of the easiest ways to do that is to launch a project on another chain. And this is all experimental. We honestly have no idea how this will play out. And to say, hey, let's mix these two communities. Let's bring in a whole bunch of people who are minting this project on ETH into our Discord. And they're going to be like, what's the genesis? What's the story behind this project? Who are the creators? And our hope is that a whole bunch of people are going to be now looking at at Stacks who potentially weren't originally, that people from OpenSea who, think the MegaKongs art pops off, or who think the DAO Kong is interesting. And we're hoping that we can just get more exposure to Stacks in a way that isn't going to feel like overzealous marketing. And I think that's important as well. There's only so much you can do as an individual to persuade somebody to take a look at Stacks. And there's only so much the foundation can do or the marketing team can do to put Stacks in front of people. Sometimes the subtle marketing of, hey, look at this really cool project that you kind of discover yourself is the best way to do it. So it's going to mint on Ethereum. And I don't know, I think it's probably one of the first examples of a truly cross-chain project. Obviously, Satoshiables have been the first to do the bridge and move some of the community over from Ethereum to Stacks. But it's very rare. Someone will have to correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't see many projects who just straight up say, hey, we're minting in two places. And because of that, we don't really know how it's going to play out in terms of the community and Discord and that kind of thing. But we are very mindful, and I think it's the right thing to do.
So if that's the case and people are listening, maybe there's members of the Ethereum community and they're like, that sounds interesting. A kind of Stacks project moving over, or, the Stacks community, they want to get involved with something that is on Ethereum, but was born out of Megapont and Stacks. How can they get involved? I presume there's probably a Discord they can get into. Is it going to be sure. Like a whitelist process? How can people look to follow what's going on and get involved with minting one?
Yeah, so the Discord is discord.gg/Megapont. It's just the Megapont Discord, or Twitter is Megapont NFT, or you can go to megapont.com as well. So I feel like we've been quite good on our SEO stuff. If you search Megapont in Google, you're going to find us, which is great. And there's a whole bunch of information around the DAO and Kongs coming out this Friday in a newsletter, where we'll kind of bring some clarity on a few key topics. In terms of whitelist, the allocation, other than 200 of the 6,000 tokens, is pretty much gone to existing holders. Assuming that everyone takes up the allocation, which I don't think they will, I'm imagining we're going to have around 1,000 tokens for public sale. What we will do is maybe raffle some of them off, let the community decide where some of these should go. But for the time being, until we have taken snapshots and have a better understanding of how many tokens our community want to mint, it's very hard for us to say how you can best obtain access to mint one of the Kongs. The easiest way to guarantee it would be to buy into the existing Megapont ecosystem. So if you hold an ape, you can mint a Kong. If you hold 2 of our robots, you can mint a Kong. And if you hold 10 of the Wasteland Apes, which were a free NFT drop to celebrate the Stacks 1-year anniversary, you can mint a Kong. So that would be the one way to assure that you can gain access to that mint.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, Mark, man, you have a lot of stuff going on, but it's called Apes Together. And so this is quite interesting. So you you're building tools for the NFT community, creators and investors. What is Apes Together?
Yeah, so Apes Together is a startup, right? So it's a startup in this space, building things. I'm being vague there for a couple of reasons. We have the tools that everyone knows we're working on, but it really is the truest definition of a startup. So like, say, the Paul Graham definition, in my opinion, of just this machine whose objective it is to find growth. And we're doing that in a way that focuses on predominantly NFTs and Web3. And we're going to build a whole bunch of tools, a whole bunch of APIs, a whole bunch of services that focus on providing significant value to the space, whether that be to creators or to projects, NFT, Web3, crypto, that kind of thing. So it's a startup that's just going to build a bunch of things. And Apes Together has been our way of involving the community. And one way to do that is, we're going to token gate a whole bunch of stuff we build for holders of the pass. So some of the generative art tooling, some of the tools that will help project creators manage their Discord and various other things. You need to hold a pass to gain access to that. We are working on a hell of a lot behind the scenes. And again, there's some news coming out this Friday, which is really interesting for Apes Together and for our early pass holders who believed in Apes Together almost on day one. There's a nice reward for some of those folks that truly doubles down on our vision of let's take a whole bunch of NFT holders and believers in us as a team and bring them along the way right until the end. So it's a startup, and basically the best way to think about it is a lot of people said, so what exactly is it? Assuming I don't know anything about startups or tooling or anything, and I'm totally naive to the space, please tell me what the hell this is. AKA our accountants who are like, we have no idea what you're saying to us. Can you explain this in another way? A whole bunch of engineering talent working for a company that builds various things. And that's exactly how it's made up right now. There's just a whole bunch of people working on Web3 and NFT tooling and projects, which is super exciting to be a part of.
And just briefly talk us through some of that tooling. So I can see you've got Apollo, Sirius, and Freya. And this tooling is going to be, it's not just for stacks. It also works on Ethereum and other chains, right?
Yep. So, we're chain agnostic as an organization because the people who are in it are. And we're really doubling down at the moment on tooling that we used in Megapont and we've used in Weirdos, which is a project that I've been a part of on the core tech team there, and productizing that. So the generative art product, that's used for Weirdos, it's used for MegaKongs, it's used for the Robot Factory, it's used for Megapont. It's tested in the wild. It's battle tested. It's been used by a bunch of projects. There are a couple of other projects on Ethereum that use it that nobody even knows about. So what we're doing is we're availing that interface for that tooling to a whole bunch of people, and that's Apollo. So that's going to make it easier for artists to build generative collections, and generative collections are chain agnostic anyway. The NFT is really, for the most part, driven by OpenSea in a way. The metadata standards, when it across chains and whoever you talk to, you ask them, what does your metadata look like? Oh, it conforms to the OpenSea sort of schema, right? So if you build a generative collection on Stacks, it's a generative collection on Ethereum with a few little differences maybe in the metadata. And then at the moment, the tool that we've made the most progress on, which I gave an overview of in a video update, is Osiris, which is basically like pre-mint. So if anyone's used pre-mint, it's a really nice, clean way of collecting whitelist addresses for your project. And we're building our interpretation of that for, I guess, cross-chain projects. Selfishly, we're dog-fooding that for MegaKongs. We need to collect both Ethereum and Stacks addresses. So we're building a bunch of tooling, and we're also giving to some people and some projects some one-to-one support on various smart contract stuff, various mint stuff. And it's not like we're gating that and saying, hey, only these whales get access to us as a core team. What tends to happen is we'll see a message in the Discord chat. Somebody's having an issue. We eventually take it to DMs, and all of a sudden someone's sending us emails to review some contracts or just give some feedback. So it's a really cool community of creators right now, which is great.
Nice. And one of the themes that I'm seeing at the moment across different NFT communities is in real life merch. Right, Mark? So, Megapont merch, Megapont Ape Club merch, when can we expect it?
Pretty soon. So the merch has been pushed so much, which is frustrating because the merch is basically ready to go. We've been sort of sold on the merch, the actual physical merch, for some time now, but we're trying to innovate on the e-commerce layer, and we're trying to do something really effing exciting here, that isn't being done by any other project.
Yes.
And I think when our merch drop happens and the associated coverage that comes with that, people will understand that we really are trying to push the space forward beyond just NFTs. So I have to be very vague intentionally on this, because there are parties involved with this that are much larger than ourselves. We're just, I guess, in a way, a small piece of the pie. The marketing teams for some of these other projects are much bigger, and I'm not going to front run that for some of these organizations.
I'm trying to squeeze you for some serious alpha here, Mark. You got to give us something. Or what's the timeline?
Within a month, 100% within a month. I can't say why and a date, because if I say why and what's happening, people will be like, I know what's happening on this date, and this is why it's coming out this date. It's soon, TM. It's really exciting. It's going to be, it's for some people are going to be, oh, I don't care about this stuff. It's quite boring. But other people, I hope they're going to be like, this is for the space. This is massive. And I see a whole lot of other projects doing stuff to push the space forward in ways that is significant, and I fully get behind them. But there aren't many people who are trying to solve one of the biggest problems, which is, how the hell do we get new wallets involved with the space and interested and onboard them? And I think what we're doing with our merch drop is crossing the chasm in terms of making regular folks who perhaps know a little bit about crypto, mostly from what they've read maybe in mainstream media, and are now seeing how it solves a problem or does something that day to day they get. And yeah, I'm slowly going to unveil certain things here, which is quite amusing. But I'm more bullish on what we're doing with the merchandise drop, and Apes Together is heavily involved there, than probably the Kongs, for the sole reason that I think for the space as a whole and Web3 as a whole, it's going to do magical things.
Okay, well, I guess if anyone is suitably intrigued by Mark's slightly vague but certainly intriguing thoughts, just go to Mark's Twitter and turn notifications on, and all will be revealed. Well, let's go to a very quick break, Mark, and then we'll come back and we'll start to finish off. We'll have some fun. We'll run you through the very famous Crypto Conversation hot take round.
For crypto indices and benchmarking, Brave New Coin's powerful indexing engine can calculate high-frequency intraday and end-of-day indices for a wide range of index products. Brave New Coin's custom indices team delivers experienced consultancy, premium data, and trusted calculation. Contact BNC today to find out more.
All right, we're back, and I'm with Mark McKenzie, founder of Megapont, MegaKongs, the Megapont fictional NFT universe. There's some in real life merch coming up that sounds quite intriguing. But Mark, I like to finish each podcast with a quick round of rapid fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
Sure, let's do it.
So just, how this rolls, kind of rapid fire hot take style answers. Here we go. I guess question one for you, Mark, is we've kind of covered this, but where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
Oh, 80% towards multi-chain right now, I think.
Yep. All right.
That's where I'd be.
Fair enough. What would you say, Mark, is your firmest conviction, crypto opinion?
Bitcoin is the king.
I love it. You're definitely a Bitcoiner at heart. Okay, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. As someone who's been in tech and startups for a long time, I'm sure you can very much relate to that. So let's look forward. 10 years time, NFTs, what does it all look like?
Very, very different from what it looks like now. I think we are going to transition to a world where people start to remember there are other smart contracts not just NFTs. Not everything needs to be an NFT. And I think we'll start to see this divergence of NFT projects that think, hey, I could put a whole bunch of really exciting stuff in smart contracts and not think about how I try to shoehorn this to conform to an NFT standard. And I think over the next 5 years, we'll start to see a lot of innovation at the smart contract layer, where NFTs are really used for governance and ownership of various things.
What are some NFT projects outside of anything that you're involved in that you think are doing, some really interesting, innovative stuff at the moment?
Doodles.
Yeah, fair enough. Hey, the Doodles and space stuff was very cool, and they were at South by Southwest last week doing some cool stuff as well, by the look of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Doodles and also Creeps as well. I think what they're doing, a little bit biased because I perhaps have some privileged information around the project, but I think what they're doing is fantastic. And there's a common theme here. I'm really bullish on NFT projects that are looking to build a real brand that moves into, let's say, like Web 2 or traditional media.
Yeah. All right, let's zoom out a little. Time to get a little bit weird. Mark, what do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
Wow. I'm one of those individuals that tries not to think about this stuff because it gives me a bit of a headache, because I think that it's something that I have no influence or control over, and it's the sum of all parts kind of thing. Where we go to, I hope it's a utopia, but what I do hope is that it's a more equally distributed utopia. By that, people have heard me say this many, many times. I'm of the belief that imaginary lines drawn on the globe make no sense in the world that a lot of the crypto community wants to go to. So I hope that there are equal opportunities for everyone across the globe. And I think I'm bullish on crypto for enriching communities and empowering communities that previously haven't had the opportunities that, say, the large economic Western powerhouses have.
Very nice. Yep, makes sense to me, Mark. William Gibson, famous sci-fi author, he said, you'd be very aware of this quote, that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. With that in mind, can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't really aware of it? Should we think outside of crypto or something else? I think crypto, generally speaking, it's still very, very expensive to use crypto, and even on stacks. We still don't understand that it's prohibitively expensive for a huge part of this of the populace of the world to be paying $1 to do anything. And if we look at that as the sort of the cost of transacting with most chains right now, or even a cent, it's hard to think that like transaction costs of 1 cent could be prohibitive to communities, but it is the case that would be true, especially if you're looking at, say, 100 to 200 transactions a day. So I'm really excited for a more affordable way of transacting with various blockchains, and that's where Lightning and the work that Jack is doing at Strike is potentially, and that's maybe one company we haven't touched on here. I think Strike is a startup or an organization that I think will play a big part in changing the world over the next 10 to 20 years. And if it was a publicly traded company right now, I would be putting my entire pension pretty much into Strike, I think. So yeah, I'm super bullish on anyone doing anything with Lightning, which is why I'm also
very bullish on some of the Stacks startups that are looking to play around with Lightning as well.
Nice. And are you following the El Salvador bond and what they're doing there?
Yeah, somewhat. Not enough to be able to comment on it, other than
wish them the best.
Wish them the best, and hey, that's pretty cool, right? It's better than your traditional yield-bearing government bonds, right?
Yeah.
More exciting anyway.
Awesome. Let's close this out, Mark. Finally, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, TV show, or universe?
Dune. Very easy to say now the movie is out. But yeah, I think Dune still something that stands out to me. I think anything by Frank Herbert is pretty remarkable.
Fantastic. Love it. All right. This has been fun, Mark. Nothing else to do really except hand the metaphorical microphone back to your good self. Please tell the people where they should go to follow you on Twitter, where they should go to learn all about the various projects that you're building, I guess under the kind of the Megapont brand umbrella.
Yeah, megapont.com or Google Megapont, and you'll be able to find our Twitter, our socials very, very easily from a simple Google search.
Thanks very much, Mark. We'll do this again sometime. This was a good one. Appreciate your time. All the best, and bye for now.
Thank you very much. Been awesome. Thanks, everyone.
All right, there you go. That was Mark from Megapont. And yeah, as I did say briefly in the podcast, this has been a cool week for projects on Stacks, I guess, with Megapont obviously, and also the Byzantium guys from earlier in the week, and yeah, getting to chat to Eli Herf. I had a Zoom with him. We've been chatting online. We joke that we've been internet dating for about 6 months or so, but we kind of met, not in real life, but on a Zoom at least. And we're going to do a podcast together very soon as well. So excited to have Eli Herf on the show. And also, shout out to the Stacks Dads crew. I was just chatting to Mark about that as well. I think he's keen to join that community, Stacks Dads crew. So shout out to you guys. Shout out to Stacks community in general, and anyone else who's still listening here at the end of the show. Always appreciate all listeners. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, do me a favor, give us a nice 5-star rating in Apple iTunes or the podcast app. Segments those reviews for all the different places around the world, so it's good to get a few different 5-star reviews in different places around the world. If that's you, would certainly appreciate it. All right, that's today's show, folks. Thanks for listening. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave New Coin.